You've been in this situation before. You work harder, you explain yourself more carefully, you try to be more agreeable, more helpful, more present. And yet somehow, the more effort you pour in, the less the other person seems to value you. They become cooler, more distant, occasionally dismissive. You can feel the respect draining away even as you try to hold it in place. And the worst part is that you can't quite understand why. You're doing everything right. You're trying. So why does it feel like trying is the very thing that's costing you? This is one of the quieter paradoxes of human social life, and it runs deeper than most people realize. It isn't simply about playing games or pretending not to care. It touches something fundamental about how human beings read one another, how we assign worth, and what we unconsciously signal when we need something from someone else. Let's start with what's actually happening beneath the surface. When you chase respect, you are, in a very real sense, placing the other person in a position of power over you. You are communicating without words that their opinion of you matters more than your opinion of yourself. And human beings are extraordinarily sensitive to these signals. We pick them up without thinking. We don't consciously decide to respect someone less because they're trying too hard. It happens automatically. The way you might instinctively trust someone who walks into a room calmly more than someone who rushes in looking flustered and apologetic. There's a useful idea here from the psychology of social perception. When someone appears to need your approval, your brain quietly recalibrates their status. Not because you're cruel, but because the need for approval itself suggests a kind of internal deficit. It suggests that the person doesn't fully believe in their own worth, and so they're looking to borrow some of yours. That borrowing, however gentle and well-intentioned, creates an imbalance. And imbalances in social dynamics tend to resolve themselves in predictable ways. The person with the perceived surplus of worth moves upward in status. The person seeking to borrow it moves downward. This is not a moral judgment, it's a description of a pattern. And understanding the pattern is the first step to stepping out of it. Now let's go a little deeper, because the psychology here connects to something more philosophical. There is a difference between wanting to be respected and needing to be respected. Wanting is natural. We are social creatures. We care what others think of us, and there is nothing wrong with that. The desire to be seen, valued, and acknowledged is one of the most human things there is. But needing is something else. When respect becomes a need rather than a preference, it starts to drive behavior in ways that undermine the very thing you're seeking. You begin to monitor. You begin to adjust yourself constantly based on how others seem to be responding. You lose the thread of your own perspective because you're too busy tracking theirs. One way to think about this is through the idea of inner authority. Some people carry their sense of worth inside them. It doesn't depend on constant confirmation from the outside world. It's not arrogance, and it's not indifference. It's simply a settled quality, a kind of groundedness that others can feel. When you speak to someone like this, you notice that they're not performing for you. They're not angling for your approval, they're just present. And paradoxically, that quality makes you want to give them your respect freely, because they clearly don't need it from you. Other people carry their sense of worth outside themselves. It lives in other people's reactions, in praise, in being included, in being chosen. This isn't a character flaw. It often develops for very understandable reasons, sometimes rooted in early experiences where love or safety felt conditional. But when worth lives outside you, you are always at the mercy of the weather. Every cool response from someone you admire becomes a small crisis. Every moment of being overlooked feels like evidence of something you already feared about yourself. And here is where the chasing begins. Because if your worth depends on external confirmation, then any threat to that confirmation feels urgent. You have to fix it. You have to explain, or try harder, or be more agreeable, or make yourself more useful. The anxiety drives the behavior, and the behavior, as we've seen, tends to produce the opposite of what you're hoping for. Let's bring this into some grounded, recognizable territory. Think about a workplace situation. Someone wants to be taken seriously by their colleagues. They volunteer for everything. They over-explain their contributions. They seek reassurance after every meeting. Their colleagues don't think less of them as people, but they do begin to see them as someone who needs managing rather than someone who leads. The respect they're chasing keeps retreating. Now think about a friendship or a romantic situation. Someone is deeply invested in being liked by a particular person. They're always available, always accommodating, always the first to reach out. The other person, without necessarily meaning to, begins to take that availability for granted. The dynamic shifts. What began as warmth starts to feel, to the other person, like pressure, and what was once a connection starts to feel like an obligation. In both cases, the person chasing respect is not doing anything wrong in any moral sense. They're responding to a genuine need, but the strategy is working against them. So what does a different approach actually look like? It begins with something internal rather than external. It begins with the slow, sometimes uncomfortable work of locating your sense of worth inside yourself rather than in other people's responses. This doesn't happen overnight, and it doesn't mean becoming detached or cold. It means practicing the habit of returning to your own judgment, asking yourself what you actually think rather than immediately scanning for what others think. Noticing when you're about to do something primarily to manage someone else's impression of you, and pausing to ask whether it reflects what you genuinely value. Boundaries are a significant part of this. Not boundaries as a performance of toughness, but boundaries as an honest expression of what you will and won't accept. When you hold a boundary calmly and without apology, you are communicating something important. You are saying, in effect, that your own sense of what is right matters to you, that you are not infinitely adjustable, that there is a self here with its own shape. And that, quietly and reliably, tends to generate respect in a way that no amount of trying ever quite manages. Distance, too, plays a role, though it's often misunderstood. The kind of distance that earns respect isn't coldness or game-playing. It's the natural distance that comes from having your own life, your own interests, your own direction. When you're not constantly available, not constantly seeking, not constantly adjusting yourself to fit someone else's preferences, you become more interesting. Not because you've manufactured mystery, but because you're genuinely occupied with your own existence. There's something almost counterintuitive at the heart of all this. Respect, it turns out, is not something you can take. It can only be given, and it tends to be given most freely to people who seem least concerned with receiving it. Not because indifference is attractive in itself, but because the absence of need signals something that people find deeply reassuring. It signals that this person is not going to collapse if you don't validate them. It signals that they have something solid inside them. And solid things, in a world full of uncertainty, are worth holding on to. This doesn't mean you stop caring about people. It doesn't mean you become aloof or withhold warmth. It means you stop outsourcing your self-worth. It means you become, gradually and imperfectly, someone who can offer connection without depending on it for survival. That shift, quiet as it is, changes everything. Not just how others see you, but how you move through the world. With a little more ease, a little more steadiness, a little more of yourself intact. If this resonated with you, Inside the Labyrinth has more explorations of psychology and human dynamics that might be worth your time. And if you found something useful here, consider sharing it with someone who might need it. And if this spoke to a part of you that rarely gets heard, stay with that feeling for a moment. You are not broken because you feel deeply. You are only beginning to understand yourself. Subscribe to Inside the Labyrinth for more reflections on the hidden patterns of the human mind.